Very good. Well, good morning. It's such an honor and a privilege to be here this morning. We are excited to be with you. Here in just a minute, we're going to be in Luke chapter 5. So I want to encourage you to start turning there if you would. We'll be in Luke chapter 5 in just a minute. In September of 2004, Barbara, my wife, and I, we packed a 17-passenger van, and we put all our worldly possessions, our two children, a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old in the van at the time, and we were at my parents' house over in North Richland Hills, and we went 1,000 miles south to central Mexico, Leon, Guanajuato. And 3 years prior to that, I'd been a youth minister in McAlester, Oklahoma. We had done it all, seen it all. We were 20-something. We knew everything about everything, right? We were ready to conquer the world. And so we headed south. And shortly after that time of arriving there in Mexico, my wife began to say, I think I'm pregnant. I said, you're not. It's fine. No, everything's fine. Don't worry about it. We just moved. It's, just transitioning to another country. Don't worry about it. You're fine. Well, a short time after that, she said, you know what sounds really good? KFC. I said, you're pregnant. So we were excited. We love our third baby girl, Kaysen. We were excited to have her, but we weren't expecting any of our children. We knew we'd have children someday, but we didn't know. We just kind of left it up to God and hoped we'd have children, prayed for children, and God gave us exactly what we needed. Well, a short time after that, our sponsoring congregation in McAlester, Oklahoma, Maine, Oklahoma, called and said, Sean, you're out of money. You're going to need to come home. We had just moved to a foreign country, just found out we're pregnant with a third child. She's going to require some KFC apparently. And we don't have support. We were scared out of our minds. We had no idea what we were going to do, but God had it all in hand. Are you in Luke 5 yet? Everybody got it? If you got it, say yes. All right, very good. So look with me at Luke chapter 5. On one occasion, while the crowd was pressing in on him to hear the word of God, he was standing by the lake of Gennesaret. And he saw 2 boats by the lake, but the fishermen had gone out of them and were washing their nets. Getting into one of the boats, which was Simon's, he asked him to put out a little from land. And he sat down and taught the people from the boat. And when he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, put out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch. Simon answered, Master, we've toiled all night, took nothing, but at your word I will let down the nets. And then when they had done this, they enclosed a large number of fish, and their nets were breaking. They signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both boats so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, Depart from me, for I'm a sinful man, O Lord. For he and all who were with him were astonished at the catch of fish they had taken. And so also were James and John, sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. And Jesus said to Simon, Do not be afraid. From now on, you'll be catching men. When they brought their boats to the land, they left everything and followed him. So we find some fishermen. They had just got through a night of working hard. It says that they toiled. Some versions say worked hard all night. I don't know about you, but I'm a night owl. I can stay up. When I was a youth minister, I was the king of the lock-in because I could stay up all night. It was no big deal. Getting up, on the other hand, do we have any morning people? Just a quick show of hands. Any morning people? Okay. We're going to offer an invitation here in a little bit. You need to be on. No, I'm just teasing. We'll pray for you, but that's good. My wife's a morning person. And there's some people that love getting up in the morning. I'm one of those guys that stay up all night. So especially our morning people. Think about it just for a minute. You've been working all night. You're exhausted. Somebody gets in your boat. He wants to preach a revival sermon. So he has you get out there. And I would imagine, as some of you are doing right now, probably nodding a little bit. You've been working all night, just trying to stay awake. Man, I just want to stay awake. And after he preaches, who knows how long he preached, he says, hey, y'all want to go fishing? If there was ever an "are you kidding me" moment, this was that moment. We just worked hard all night. We finally got our nets put up. Everything's ready. I just want to go home, kiss the missus, maybe grab something to eat on the way to bed and sleep. But Jesus says, hey, you want to go fishing? I'm not sure what their thought was. Well, actually, we kind of know because Peter said it. We've toiled all night. We worked hard all night. How does it feel whenever you do something, whenever you work hard at something, and then come away feeling like, that was a dud. That didn't work out the way I'd hoped. The text doesn't say, but I imagine that they were just annoyed. They were exhausted. They were defeated. It's probably just, man, I'm tired. I want to go home and I want to rest. We've already worked hard, Jesus. Why do you want us to work a little bit harder? But it's interesting to me how Peter responds, because he actually responds exactly the opposite of how I would have responded. Because I would have been like, hey, thanks for the lesson. Great job, preach. I got to go. I got some other things I got to do. I got to get some sleep. Thank you, but no thank you. You know, maybe tomorrow night. Why don't you show back up? Tonight we'll be back out, you know. Same time, same place. Come on back out and we'll do it again tonight. Peter says, but at your word. I want you to hang on to that for just a minute. But at your word. When you read through God's word and Jesus tells you to do something, how do you typically respond? We want to say, I do it. But do we? When Jesus says forgive, I remember one time Peter thought he was really a forgiving man, and he said, what if I forgive up to 7 times? Jesus says, no, 70 times 7. Jesus said, if somebody asks, you give without expecting anything back. Now hold up, Jesus. They're going to take advantage of me if I do that. They're going to abuse my forgiveness. They're going to abuse my finances. Pray for my enemy. Do you know what they did to me? Do you know how he's treated? Do you know what she said about me? You want me to pray for that person? You want me to forgive that person? You want me to give? Jesus said, take up your cross daily. I don't know about you, but at this moment when I'm reading through this story, I'm super proud of Peter. Because Peter responds in a way that I wouldn't have. He said, at your word. Jesus, you say it, I'll do it. I'm amazed by your teaching. If you say it, I'll do it. What would the kingdom like? I want to invite you into this question. What would the kingdom be like if every disciple responded that way? Jesus, you name it, I'll do it. I don't care what it's going to cost me. I don't care how much it's going to hurt. I don't care about the emotions I'm going to have to deal with. If you say to do it, I'm going to do it. At your word. Oh, man, that really impacts me. I don't know. It might not mean much to you, but as I read over that, I'm so challenged by that. I think this story really has a lot of correlations between 2020 and this trip, because I think similarly to our 2020, I don't know about your experience, but for me in 2020, I found myself exhausted, annoyed, defeated quite often. And if you didn't find yourself that way in 2020, you might want to check your pulse. For us there at Greenlawn, you know, we had these announcements of different people. We're a congregation of about 850. We've lost a bunch of members. A bunch of people have passed. A lot of people are in the hospital right now. A lot of people are dealing with a lot of things, and you just feel exhausted. Emotionally, you're just exhausted. You're annoyed and frustrated. I often joke because the only place I can really, it doesn't grow up here. So, you know, where you gotta grow it, right? My grandma used to ask me, why is your beard growing south? Well, that's where it's growing, Grandma. I'm sorry. But, you know, the mask drives me nuts. It's not that big of a deal. I know it's not that big of a deal, but it drives me nuts. Some of you probably know Questlove. You know, he has like a pick in his hair. I'm thinking about starting a beard pick because every time I take off my mask, it's like chopped in half. I need to just, it drives me nuts. There's little things that are just annoying. You can't go to the restaurant you used to go to. You can't do the things you used to. We can't even worship like we used to. We can't sit together. There's little things that are annoying. And sometimes we just feel defeated. We just feel like, I don't see an end to this. I don't know. They're talking about a vaccine. Is that going to work? I've heard this one guy had this one thing happen about, and if you look on the Facebook that everything's factual, well, there's this going on and there's that going on, and I heard this one thing about, and you just think, is there ever an end to any of this? You just feel defeated in all that's going on this year. It's kind of been a dumpster on fire floating down a river without a paddle. But here's the thing. Jesus asked them, do you want to go fish? And if you know a fisherman, you know this. A fisherman is going to what? They're going to fish. I think similarly, the lesson we need to bring out of this is a disciple is going to make disciples. A number of years ago, we went down here to Lake Corsicana. Maybe some of you have been to it. It's just south. It's about 75 miles south. And my dad, my brother, my son, and I, we hired a guide. And he had this technology on the boat that I have never seen before in my life. This was probably, 2008, 2009. Mason's nearly 22. He was probably about 10, so 12 years ago. You do the math. And this guy had a trolling motor on his boat that was hooked up to GPS. Just this crazy, again, it's beyond my... And so he would take this trolling motor, find a school of fish down there at the bottom of the lake, and that trolling motor would connect on that school of fish. Wherever that school of fish, somehow with GPS, wherever that school of fish went, that trolling motor would go. And we just throw our line over the, it was almost like shooting fish in a barrel, We'd throw our little line over, and we just reel in a fish every time. I mean, I think we got on the lake at 7 or 8. We were off the lake by 9 or 10. We had all caught our limit. I mean, it was just like that. Well, long before GPS, there was some kind of creation GPS going on here. Because when they go out to fish, it was as though every fish in that lake said, we got to get out of this lake now, and the only way is their net. And everybody jumped in that net. It says that their net began to break. So they called their other fishermen over. They said, guys, we need your help. Come over here. So they came over, and it says their boats began to sink. This catch was a net-breaking, boat-sinking catch. Clearly, this is something that the fishermen had never experienced before in their life. They got their friends to help, and it says everyone was amazed. And if this would have been me, I probably would have been thinking about retirement. We could sell this in the village. We'd be set. We don't have to worry we don't have to go out every night, or at least we can space it out a little bit. Let's go once a month. We don't have to go every night and just kind of that hand-to-mouth, if I don't catch, I don't eat. We'd be able to sell this, sell all our stuff. We're set. At the very least, I would want to hire Jesus. I'd like, hey, preach. What do you think about? Can we make some kind of? I like the way you fish. Can we work this out? But I want you to notice that Peter, when he heard the message, saw the catch, was broken. It says he fell to his knees before Jesus and said, "I am a sinner." Now, I don't know about you, but that would not have been my first reaction. And yet Peter finds himself broken before Jesus, and I love Jesus' response in verse 10. He says, "Simon, don't be afraid. From now on, you will be catching men." I think NIV says people. Obviously, not leaving out women. That's not the idea. We understand what he means. But I imagine Peter just felt overwhelmed. We see that in his response. And maybe similarly, when we talk about, when Charlie talks about the call to reach the lost, you feel overwhelmed. Maybe similarly, you're thinking, I don't know where to start. What's really cool, when we pulled up into the parking lot, I thought, man, they're in a mission field sandwich. You've got apartments on both sides. I mean, this is great. You don't even have to hardly go anywhere. Just go outside in the parking lot, and you've got people on your right, you've got people on your left, right here, right around you. And I love, we'll talk about missions in a minute. I love that you're going all over the world, but you've got people right in your front yard, right in your backyard, that need to hear about Jesus. There's people all over. And again, maybe similarly to Peter, you say, well, hey, how am I supposed to talk about Jesus? I'm a sinner. Well, it's kind of interesting because Peter actually declared that exact same thing, and it didn't seem to bother Jesus. I'll take care of that. Jesus had a plan. I'm actually going to die for you for that. We'll work that out. I want you to come follow me. Maybe others of you are thinking to yourself, well, I'm just not educated enough. I don't know enough about the Bible. I couldn't possibly share Jesus because I just don't, man, I'm not the preacher. I'm not one of the elders or deacons or missionaries. I don't know the Bible like I should. Well, it's funny that you would say that. Peter never actually declares that, but in Acts 4:13 it says they were astonished by Peter and John because they were uneducated, common men. So if you don't feel like you know enough, welcome to the club. Peter already started down that road, and yet it says he was bold in his faith. Maybe you think, well, Sean, I'll just be honest with you. I'm scared. I don't know where to start. I don't know how to start sharing my faith. Well, once again, if you look in the text, it says Peter fell to his knees. I don't know the last time I fell to my knees in fear. I don't remember a time really in my life where I was just so broken that I just fell like that. So anything we can say, maybe use as an excuse, or anything we might say, I just don't know if I can do that, Peter would probably have a similar response. And yet as we continue on in this story, we realize the only response, the only correct response is to follow. Do what Jesus calls us to do. Here's the part I didn't tell you at the beginning of that story, because I told you kind of not the bad news. We were super overjoyed to have Kaysen. We're crazy about Kaysen. She's our sweet little baby girl. But the bad news about finding out we didn't have support. I made one phone call to one guy. Now here's what's funny. I didn't know the guy. I had never met this guy. In fact, a stranger, my brother introduced me to some guy that said, oh, cool, you guys are going to go do mission work. That sounds great. I know a guy. They love missions. Here's his name. Here's his number. And maybe you could holler at him sometime if you ever need. Because I know missionaries, one of their challenges is they need support. They often struggle in support. I'd never met the guy before in my life. I called him. A couple of days later, I got an email that said they were going to support us $1,000 a month. They did that for all 6 years we were in Mexico. I'd never met that man before. Here's what I want you to hear in that story. God's already on it. I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm scared. I don't have enough education. I'm a sinner. God's already on that. God will work that out. If you'll trust Him enough to leave behind whatever's keeping you from sharing your faith, He'll work it out. Because you see, I want you to understand, God doesn't call the ready. He makes ready the called. You might say, I'm not ready. Great! You're exactly where God needs you. He's going to do great things through you. Hang on to that humility. Hang on to that dependence. It'll cause you to pray more. It will cause you to seek Him more in His Word. God doesn't call the ready, but He makes ready the called. I was panicked with a new baby girl in a foreign country and no support, and yet God was already working out everything that needed to be worked out. When we left Leon in 2010, after 6 years, there were 2 congregations. There was leadership in both. They were both growing. God did amazing things. You see, we get caught up in the details, and we forget Jesus is simply saying, don't be afraid. From now on, you'll be catching men. We talk about disciple making. A lot of things come to mind. I think about in John chapter 8, Jesus says a true disciple will abide in His word or hold to His teachings. John 13, Jesus says a true disciple will love. They'll love one another. John 15, Jesus says a true disciple will bear fruit. There's a lot of things that come to mind when we think about being a disciple. But here's what I want you to know. The first time Jesus called people. The original calling. Jesus called them to follow him and catch men, make disciples. That was what the original call was all about. Church of this congregation is a missional congregation. I love it when Charlie was reading all those names and seeing all those different places that you guys are helping. You have heard the call of a lost and dying world. You understand the urgency. You not only heard it, you picked up the phone. You answered that call. You said, we will respond. Your Mission Sunday's coming up. March 28th is the day that's coming up quickly when you'll take up a contribution. But here's what I want you to understand this morning, church, because our mayor, our governor, our senator, they can make us wear masks. They can tell us you can't meet. They can tell us the ways we can whenever we meet. But I want you to remember, the call doesn't stop because the caller never stops. The one who called us, God still has a purpose. Whatever happens in this world, God still has a purpose. He's the one that causes a catch that breaks nets. He's the one that causes boats to sink when they're full of fish. He's the one that washes feet. He's the one that walks on water. He's the one that nothing can stop, and he's called us to fish for men. COVID can't stop the kingdom. Here's just a few of the names. I want to share a few of your missionaries once again. Charlie already shared those with you, but I want you to look here at a few of the names that you're a part of. Of course, Jim Corner, you know him well. They're in Cameron. Stephen, they're in Tanzania. You're helping Raji in Israel. You're helping Brian go over to India. And even a local minister there, Raja. You help the Samaria church and youth camp there in Samaria, Russia. You help Hector here in the Iglesia de Cristo. You help Vladimir in the Ukraine. You're also partnering with several missionary organizations, EEM, the Genesis Alliance, ERN, New Life Behavior International, Churches of Christ Disaster Relief. There's local work going on, the Community Picnic, Back to Church Sunday, College Youth Summit. I see your mission heart. I see your passion to see the gospel go out, the good news of Jesus Christ go out, and I honor you in that. Your goal this year specifically is $100,000, and I don't know how that strikes you. For some of us, that might be a lot of money. For others of us, it might not be that much. I don't know, but let me help you put it in perspective just a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, we're there at Green Lawn Church of Christ in Lubbock, Texas. Our congregation's about 850,000, okay? I understood that kind of pre-COVID, y'all were 225, 250. This morning they heard there was a guest preacher and everybody cleared it. No, I'm just teasing. I know with the weather and COVID, I know numbers are down a little bit. But again, let me help you put that into perspective. A congregation of 850 members, your congregation here. 2 years ago, our mission goal, guess what it was? $100,000. Now think about what that means for you to give that kind of money and what that means for 850 people to give that kind of money. I'm not trying to badmouth Green Lawn. They have an amazing mission heart, do great things. We have some money that comes out of our regular budget, and then we also have a special mission contribution. That's not to mock them by any means. I'm trying to honor you in that, the way that you are willing to make sacrifices. This is no small effort for you. This is nothing you take lightly. I know this is your passion. You're willing to sacrificially give to answer that call to reach the lost, and I want to honor you for that. In this actual context of 1 Corinthians 9:16, Paul's defending his right to be supported. As an apostle, as a missionary, as a man out trying to reach the lost, Paul defends his right, and in verse 16 he says this, For if I preach the gospel, that gives me no ground for boasting, for necessity is laid upon me. I have to do this, is what he's saying. Woe to me if I do not preach the gospel. I wonder if you and I feel like that. Sometimes we think, well, yeah, but that was Paul. Well, the preacher will take care of that. The missionaries will take care of that. Deacons will take care of that. That's supposed to be a disciple. Every disciple is supposed to find their way. Does that mean everybody knocks doors? No, of course not. Different people have different gifts. We understand that in the body. But one way or another, you and I are supposed to be involved, whether that's giving, whether that's actually going to a foreign country or going right here next door, if that's helping get the meal together for the mission Sunday luncheon that you're going to have. Whatever that is, some way or another, we need to contribute to seeing the gospel spread. The missionaries and mission efforts that you have listed have heard the call. But again, I honor you. I commend you because you've also heard that call. And you said, we'll partner with you. Buckingham Road will join into what you're planning on doing. When it comes to following Jesus, never forget that first call. The first time he called his disciples, it was to go and be fishers of men. A fisherman will fish. A disciple will make disciples. And I know you're tired again. 2020, man, it was a long, difficult year. We've joked that it's kind of dog years, you know. That was 7 years, actually. I don't know if you know that. Legally, that's considered a dog year, 7 years. It was just a long, I've got a few gray hairs now that I think came from 2020. It was a long, difficult year. Similarly, you might find yourself exhausted, annoyed, and feeling defeated. But Jesus still has a purpose. His kingdom hasn't stopped. And I know as sons and daughters of the King, you want to please the King. We want to see the borders of his kingdom grow. And just like Peter, again, you might feel like saying, Jesus, we've toiled all night. But my prayer for you is that in the end you'll say, but at your word. Jesus, at your word. I trust you. I'm not ready. I'm not ready to answer that call, but I know you make ready the called. So I'm going to trust you. I'm going to be obedient in that. As a disciple, our answer always has to be, but at your word.